One of the things I've learned is that I always need help. When I was a young woman, I thought I could take care of myself, and I wanted to take care of myself, and I didn't want my husband to take care of me, so he kept trying, and I kept refusing him. One day I decided that however he wanted to help me, I would let him help me. I would not refuse him any way that he wanted to help me. The first thing that happened is I realized I was really loved by my husband, and that was his love language. The second one was I became a younger woman. I became a softer woman. And the third thing is that through the years that have followed, I realize I always need help. And if anyone wants to help me, I'm glad to have their help. And they don't have to do it the way I would do it. I just gladly receive their help.
When I was 25, I had a hysterectomy, so pretty much before then and from then on I knew that I wouldn't have kids. I never really had the deep desire to have kids. I met my husband in my 30s and we got married when I was 40, so he didn't want kids, everything was great, and then one day we were like, let's see about having kids. So when we started looking into it, it was going to be a long process, you know, going through the state, getting foster kids, because we wanted older kids, not really infants. Apparently God had a different plan for us. We went through the classes, which was about 6 weeks. We got certified within 2 months. We got a call that they had a 7-day-old baby and a 20-month-old. And so we had 3 days to prep to go from an older child to a younger child. We took them in. They're awesome kids. Even the process from that was supposed to take 3 or 4 years, and within 2 years the adoption's final, and now our little girl is about to turn 3 and our boy is 4.5. So, you know, God is awesome.
Recently I moved from Ohio to Virginia to help an organization, a ministry. When I first knew that I was going to go there, I started looking for a home to live in, and I found a beautiful home. Beautiful, just right for me. But I didn't buy it. I wasn't sure. What God did for me is He had a couple invite me to live with them until I knew my next step, and so I moved into their home. It turned out to be 9 months, and then I thought, I think it's time for me to discern my next step. So I talked to God about it, and I told Him that if it would please Him, I'd like to know my next step before I went home for the Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays to visit. I also told Him that I would like it to be easy and for Him to bring it to me. About 9 days before I left for the Christmas holidays, someone talked to me and said, Mickey wants someone to rent her house while she's in France for the winter. Would you like to talk to her? I talked to Mickey, and at the moment I'm living in Mickey's house until she comes back from France. I'm praying about my next step. Someone has offered me an apartment to live in, and I'm praying about it. But this I have learned, that God has plans for me to prosper me, and step by step He opens them up, even when it's something as important and yet in a way as simple as, where am I going to live next?
When I was a senior in high school and I was applying for colleges, it was a really stressful time. You're wondering, what does God have planned for my life? What kind of person am I going to become? So when you're applying for these colleges, you really have a lot of hope. And there was my principal of the school. He told me, hey, I have this friend. He works at this college. It was Occidental College in California. He told me that if there was any one of my students that I thought would be a good fit for the school, let me know, and I'll see what I can do. So there was a lot of hope. I thought, maybe I was going to get a scholarship, maybe even a full ride. I was getting a lot of support from them. I went to go visit it, loved the campus and everything. And then it turned out that I didn't actually get accepted, which I took pretty hard because I really thought I was going to get in, and there was a lot of hope there. So I ended up applying to Belmont University, and I go there now, and just everything that's happened, all of the experiences I've had, all the amazing, wonderful people I've met, it really has been such an amazing experience. And I think that if I had got accepted into Occidental, everything that I've learned, I wouldn't have had the same opportunities. I don't think I would have grown as much. It just would not have nearly been the best choice. And at the time, it felt awful, but looking back, I just thank God every day that I didn't get accepted and that things worked out the way they did. So, in those times when things don't work out the way that you want them to, it's really important to remember that maybe that's just because there's something better for you, and God has something better for you.
I think the Webster's dictionary definition of humble is modest and not self-serving. And I think that the word modest sometimes gets people with them thinking it's people who don't think they're good at something, or don't think that they are, like, oh, that person's so modest, they don't know how good they are. Which, yes, that's true, but I also think it's someone who's aware of their talents, because if you're not aware that you're good at something, you're successful at something, you're not going to succeed in it. But that they know where that comes from, and they know that it comes from God, and that brings glory to Him and not them, and that's where the root of humbleness is. So they can know that they're good at something, but they know that it's not because of them, it's because of God.
When I was a young woman, getting my bachelor's with 4 children, married and 4 children, getting my bachelor's degree, I intended to have a career, just as many women have careers. But I realized that my husband really wanted me to be home-centered. So while I thought about it, in the past year, I had become a true follower of Jesus Christ. And I realized that God agreed with my husband that He intended me to be home-centered. So I had to make a decision. I decided to be home-centered. When I did, a whole new way of life opened to me, a way of life that would not have been available to me if I hadn't decided to be home-centered. I had the opportunity to lead many different women in different ways over a long period of time. I had the opportunity to travel and speak to different organizations. I had the opportunity to influence women in their choices. Then I became a leader, and I became a leader of a women's ministry, and during that time I spent a lot of time out of my home. But I realized one day that God had 5 things that He wanted for me, and I didn't have any of them at that moment. He wanted me to have more time with Him, more time in God's Word, more time with my husband, more time with my children, and more time in my home. Well, there was a day when I stopped the children's ministry, and I was in my home, and in a week I realized I had all 5 of the things that God wanted me to have. Over a period of time, I decided that God really wanted me to continue to be home-centered. And so many women came to my home, many people came to my home, and sometimes just for hospitality, sometimes because they wanted to talk to me for various reasons. But what I learned, and I discovered that if I was going to influence young women to be content in their homes, I could only do that if I was content in my own home. So for some years now, I've ministered out of my home. I've been content in my home, and now, just in the past year, God has moved me to work in an office of a ministry, and so this is another change in my life, and I have an opportunity to influence people in a different way.
I think that God gave Saul a new heart, and I feel that that says to us that God can transform you, and He can change you, and it's not so much how we start, but how we finish.